Chris Martin, he's back. Nexus finals on track. And tournament time, go pack. I'm David Hood, and this is Deadline, DBN's monthly news program. Dateline June 2025. For our feature story, diplomacy is often seen as a game of action and movement, a well-planned invasion, a multi-step convoy, a thrilling 50-50 guess. But is there ever a time in this game for doing, well, nothing? Notwithstanding some jackleg commentators' aversion to hold orders, I don't know who I'm talking about there, there are elite players out there who maintain that sometimes the best move is no move at all. Special correspondent Hal Schild called up with one such stasis proponent who will expound on his inertia initiative later in this program. But first, a look at headlines from around the world of diplomacy. John Boardman, one of the most important figures in diplomacy hobby history, passed away on May the 29th at age 92. A PhD physicist by trade, Boardman invented the play-by-mail method for this game in 1961 and ran the first zine-based postal diplomacy game beginning in 1963. His zine, called Graustark, was a mainstay of our hobby for nearly 50 years, not only because of its games, but also the lively political opinions of Boardman and others, which graced its pages. For most of the hobby's existence, all games were given an identification number called a Boardman number in order to keep track of game starts and finishes and for statistical purposes. In addition to diplomacy, John Boardman made significant contributions to science fiction fandom beginning in the 1950s and to the Society of Creative Anachronism beginning in the 1960s. He was famously expelled from the physics program at Florida State in 1957 for the crime of inviting African American students from Florida A&M to a campus event. This was a wrong which FSU wanted to right a few years ago by awarding Boardman an honorary doctorate. For a life well lived and a diplomacy career played with no stalemate lines, DBN salutes John Boardman and expresses its sincere condolences to his family and his friends. A link to his obituary is provided below. 2025 has already been quite the season for face-to-face play around the world, but we ain't seen nothing yet. The 39th annual Dixiecon in Chapel Hill, North Carolina just crowned its champ in late May, with David Miller of Maryland winning for the third time in 7 years. He edged out second-place finisher Randy Lawrence Hurt on center count, with each boasting an Austrian solo and a large three-way draw as their two eligible scores. Texan Ed Sullivan came in third. There's a link to DBN's coverage of this 18-board event below. By the time you see this episode of Deadline, tournaments in Sydney, Australia and Regensburg, Germany will have finished play. We don't have those results yet, so they're not available for this recording. But more action is on the way. The French Diplomacy Championship is July 12th through 14th in Champs-sur-Léon. The Regatta in Boulder, Colorado is July 25th through 27th, and the Norwegian Championship July 26th and 27th. 2 weeks after that will be the running of the Boston Massacre, which you'll hear more about later in this show. And then in late August comes the Cane Toad Classic in Brisbane, which this year also doubles as the Asia Pacific Championship. September will see both the Swiss Championship on the 6th and 7th and the UK Championship on the 19th through the 21st. See below in the show notes for a link to DBN's schedule page, which has information on all upcoming face-to-face, extended deadline, and virtual events in our hobby. From the world of online tournaments comes the news that Nexus Season 9's main event finalists have been announced. This season's field includes Richard B., The Great King, Cedric Williams, Darcy Morris, Varmint, Philip Bass, and Phoebe. Paris Method's selection of powers for that top board is imminent, and then I'm sure we'll be treated to full turn-by-turn coverage of the game on the Diplomat's YouTube channel. Speaking of which, that channel continues to release frequent episodes covering the Season 3 Olympus finals, the other major full-press extended deadline tournament. In addition to the usual duo of Keith Worstel and Ed Sullivan, recent videos feature a third analyst from among a motley crew of guest commentators including Cedric the Audacious Hand, Riaz Varani, Darcy Morris, Brandon Fogel, and Michalis Kamaritis. As of this episode of Deadline, the game coverage has extended through September 1909, with that release featuring guest commentary from two-time DBNI winner Peter McNamara. Use the link below to catch up on all the Olympus action on the Diplomats channel. In online variant news, the new variant Armistice Diplomacy A4 has launched signups for its new run of games on its Discord channel. This variant boasts a massive 22-player map set in the year 1919, and it features all of the chaos you would expect from that time period. This includes the Russian Civil War, the warlord-era China, the Greeks rampaging in Anatolia, and much more. This variant game should appeal to history buffs, variant fans, and diplomacy nuts alike. It's been 2 years since the previous version was run, so get in on this fun now, using the Discord link below. Now, speaking of large variants, fans of Imperial diplomacy, of which there are legions, should check out a series of videos from hobbyist King of Prussia, focused on an after-action report of a recent game he played on his Discord server. A link to his YouTube channel is provided below. Each month here on Deadline, we like to highlight the latest and greatest video, audio, or visual content from those whom we call our DBN media partners. Chris Martin has released a new episode on his popular Diplomacy Academy series after a long hiatus, focused not on how one should win a game of diplomacy, but instead on how one should lose such a game. This content is guaranteed both to entertain you and make you think. Also, the guys at the Diplomacy Games podcast out of Australia released another episode recently, this one featuring an interview with DBN personality Zoe Cameron, discussing the different play styles prevalent in Europe, North America, and the Asia-Pacific hobbies. Zoe's favorite face-to-face game of all time is also a topic of discussion, and her announcement of a new tournament scheduled for mid-October in Melbourne, with a formal hobby-wide announcement of the tournament name and other specifics teased to be imminent. Links to this content can be found below. Let's talk now about the latest news from virtual face-to-face diplomacy. First of all, there are two standalone tournaments in the virtual world: the Virtual Diplomacy Championship at the end of the season and the VWDC Summer Classic. Michalis Kamaritis has just announced that this year's Summer Classic will take place August 1st through 3rd on the VWDC Discord server. 7 rounds of play will be available that weekend overall, with one's best 3 scores counting for final standings. The games are played live through Fall 1910 term, with at least some of the round start times being conducive to players all around the globe. Below is a link to the announcement on the VWDC Discord server, which also includes a link to the tournament rules. Also, the virtual leagues around the world have continued regular play since our last episode of Deadline, including the second round of the Tour of Britain being played in late May, which featured a solo from California player Justin Lohr, launching him into the league. The latest standings from the Snake Pit League have just been released, and they show Liam Healy on top as of now. The best way to join any of the several leagues out there is to navigate to that DBN schedule page I mentioned earlier, find the links there to the available leagues that take place in Europe, North America, and the Asia-Pacific region. In Diplomacy Club news, we're pleased to announce that club play around the world continues to enjoy a renaissance, with signs of growth and dynamism everywhere, one terms. Recently in Australia, one Saturday saw a board in Melbourne, a board in Sydney, and 2 boards in Canberra all going on at the same time. A new club in Houston, Texas, called the Space City Diplomacy, just held its inaugural game, hosted by Ed Sullivan, while the Cardiac Club for players in and around North Carolina held its first game ever in Roanoke, Virginia, hosted by Riley Bucco. A great way to get up to speed on all the club play opportunities out there would be to use the link below to find our new link of club play for the DBN website. And if there is not a diplomacy listed on that site that is near you, why don't you start your own? Contact us here at info@diplobn.com if you want help doing so, and we'll put you in touch with the right resources. Speaking of DBN, we just hosted Broadcasters Brawl 3 on our YouTube channel, a virtual face-to-face game played by DBN personalities with the commentary provided by viewers, which is a kind of a way to turn the tables. The real point of the game, though, is to raise money for charity, which we're pleased to announce was a major success, as over $8,000 was raised before, during, and after the broadcast. Brandon Austin won the game as France, with his chosen charity thus receiving a double share of the loot. He bested a field of fellow Australians Jamal Blakkarly, Andrew Goff, and Zoe Cameron, as well as Americans Katie Gray, Siobhan Nolan, and Karthik Khanna. The primary hosts for this event were the winners of the previous two Broadcaster Brawls, Brandon Fogel and Michalis Komarites. If you did not catch this gaming extravaganza live, a link to the video is provided in the show notes. And now, time for a segment of our show we call Where to Play, in which we focus on one particular method or venue for diplomacy play and why you should try it. This month, we'll talk to Boston Massacre organizer Alex Maslow about his upcoming tournament in early August, as well as his work more generally in expanding club play in the greater Boston area. Alex Maslow, welcome back to Deadline.
Hey, David. Good to see you again. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. All right. For those who do not know you, there could be somebody out there. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you got into diplomacy.
Sure. Well, as most good things in my life, it starts off with my mom. In middle school, she wanted me to do some kind of after-school club. And I thought that I had outsmarted her, that if I didn't choose anything, that she'd drop it. But she found the catalog and found this board game diplomacy club run by this history teacher everyone liked and signed me up. And it was awesome, as much as I tried to fight it. But it was great. And then from there, so I've lived in Massachusetts, right? But I also lived in Alaska for a bit, California, and it's a great national hobby. And so I've got to play in different places and make some friends through it. So it's great. And now I've been running the Boston Backbiters and the tournament Boston Massacres for the past 4 years.
Well, we're going to talk about the Massacre, but before we get there, what do you do when you're not playing diplomacy, if anything?
I work for you're putting me on a spot. It is called an Aging Services Access Point, and I help seniors who are living in public housing get services they need to continue to live independently. If they need a homemaker, if they need a visiting nurse, if they just need some grab bars put into their shower, stuff like that. So social work.
That sounds like a great calling. But speaking of colleagues, let's go back to Boston Massacre for a minute. You've got this tournament coming up, so tell us about it.
Yeah. So it's Boston Massacre. So as you might imagine, it's held in Cambridge. So that's how prices go. It's August 8th to 10th. It's one game a day. Saturday morning, we also have a trip to the old State House where the historical Boston Massacre occurred. There's also a great place there called Quincy Market or Faneuil Hall, and they have some great local food there as well. I remember when I did a lot more tournament travel, I'd go to Chicago, or I'd go to Philadelphia or to Chapel Hill, and just the weekend would go by and you wouldn't even see the light of day. And I always felt silly coming back, and I'd tell my friends I was in Chicago, and they're like, "Oh, what'd you see?" I'm like, "I saw Austria take Venice." And so I really want to make sure that people have some opportunity to get the local flair, kind of see what things are about. Our venue also is very local. We're not in a hotel ballroom. We're in the basement of a game store.
And it's right there in Cambridge, and I assume easily accessible.
Definitely, yeah. If you can get to Boston, the subway can easily get you to where we are. But also, if you can get to Massachusetts, we will get you the rest of the way.
Tell us about the tournament structure itself. How many rounds do you have, and that sort of thing?
We have 3 rounds, one on Friday night, one starting Saturday in the afternoon, and then one on Sunday in the morning. And it's one of those timed rounds that ends randomly between 1 and 3, something like that.
And what kind of scoring do you use? Is there a drop round? Some people care about this sort of thing, hotels.
There's definitely no drop round. We use the new, Carnthage scoring?
Carnage with some Karthik Conif updates. Is that what that means?
Yes. Yeah. Nice portmanteau, but it's almost too similar to the original.
Fair. All right. Well, so the Massacre's been around a long time, but before you were running it, it was run by other people. Tell us how long you have been doing it, and what's it like for those that may be considering doing this at some point in the future? What's it like to organize and run a diplomacy tournament?
That's a lot. All right. Well, I'll start off with the history first. I'm glad you told me ahead of time that you were going to ask this, because we keep all the history on our website. This is not in my brain, but it was started in 2003 by Melissa Call, who now is back in her native Australia. Does she still do diplomacy stuff there?
She does. She runs PoppyCon. I'm not sure if it happens every year, but she runs PoppyCon.
Great. Okay, cool. Yeah, so she started it. And then when she left, it went over to Philadelphia, where Kristen Bedone ran it as Philadelphia Massacre, which is not a real historical event, very offensive. But then in 2016, a guy named Alan Levin had been running stuff in Boston. And so he brought back Boston Massacre. He had it until about 2016 when he had a family and he didn't want to split his time. Makes sense. Diplomacy requires a lot of attention, and these kids apparently did too. So then Randy Lawrence Hurt took it over until about 2021, and then he moved to your neck of the woods. And now I run it.
So if people want more information about Boston Massacre, tell us how they get that.
So we have a website, we have a Discord, we have a Google form for signing up, and I guess we can put all those links somewhere in the description of this.
We will.
But also, if you go to Discord and you type in Boston Backbiters or Boston Massacre, I'm sure that the group will show up, and someone else can obviously point you to that channel.
All right, that's good information. Now, for those who are thinking about maybe running a tournament sometime, what's it like to do that?
All right, well, it's a bit of work and a lot of stress before the event. Then during the event, it's a lot of work and not a whole lot of stress. And then you get a couple of months afterwards of riding high because everything went great, and then it starts all over again. And what I mean by that is that beforehand, you got to coordinate with the venue. You got to coordinate with a hotel or some place for people to sleep. This year, we're also coordinating with an Airbnb to give people a really good price-conscious option, and that's been a bit of extra communication because obviously I'm signing up for it, but I'm not the person who's going to be there. And then you got to go and you have to push the tournament onto different people and say, hey, you want to come to Boston Massacre? It's a great thing. Try to find people who are in New England, who are in New York, who are in Pennsylvania, people who are further afield. This also means that any tournament that I go to, if I decide to befriend you, it is a front. I am actually trying to get you to come to Boston Massacre.
It is not a front. It's in addition to enjoying making new friends.
Okay. In addition to, but if you come to Boston Massacre, then we just enter the friendship zone because you've done what I need to see. And so all of that is a work, but none of that obviously is particularly stressful. It's a little hard. It was hard to find a venue the first year, but they liked us, we liked them. So now we just have this ongoing relationship with them. The stressful part before the event is imagining all of the things that could go wrong. A couple of weeks ago, I think I even told you this, but I guess we'll put it on the record. I had a dream that people came to Boston Massacre, met me, and then decided to boycott the event. And so, depending on how your mind deals with the unknown, the stress can really get to you. But during the event, it's sort of the opposite, where there's a lot of work. You're making sure that people are, have beds to sleep in. You're making sure that people are getting along. You have to make TD decisions based on the game. You have to do the draw votes. You have to make sure the score is right. The score is communicated to everybody, that the code of conduct is distributed to everybody, that it's enforced fairly if it even comes up. You got to make sure that if somebody is like going out to eat lunch alone, they're doing it because they want to and not because they don't feel that they have anybody to go with. It's really important to me, but I think that it's like all the TDs, that like people are there to socialize and have a good time and meet people. And we want to make sure that if anybody's feeling on the outside that we want to help them feel more included. And because you're doing all that stuff, you don't really have any time to stress out about anything because you're just dealing with things that go on. And then the event happens, and even if something bad were to occur, I remember this from when I used to be a teacher, that like as long as nobody lost any limbs or died, it was good. It was fine. You might have learned a lot of stuff. So you have a couple of months of riding high, and then in February, it occurs to me again, I have to start planning for this event again.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. Dream analysts out there, I'm now speaking to the general public. What is wrong with Alex with respect to his boycott dream? If you have an idea, please send it to info@diplobn.com, and I would be interested in your analysis.
I would come back on for some kind of reading. That would be really interesting because this is the best work that I do. It is a lot of work. It is like stressful on occasion, but like, okay, being a social worker is great. It's very fulfilling, but like nothing compares. Like, oh, I get to make sure that my friends come together and play a game that we like. Cool.
All right. Speaking of cool, what's the deal with the hat?
This is the tricorn hat.
That's a cool hat.
Yeah, it's tricorn hat. It was worn by the colonists in Massachusetts and New England. It's associated very much with the Patriots during the American Revolution. I used to be the manager at the Lexington Battle Green, which is why I'm particularly passionate about making sure people, if this was already called Boston Massacre tournament when I took it over, but if it hadn't been, I probably would have renamed it something like that. Because that's very much what our history is. That's what a lot of our locations are. And, I've had it for a while and I've never gotten rid of it. And I figured, why not? It's good.
Well,
it's sort of like our seersucker around. I wonder if that would catch on the same way it has.
People have to wear the hat.
Right. Well, this is like $10. We can definitely get a hat for everybody, or they can go out and get their own hat.
Well, we've heard of the shot heard around the world. This is the hat seen around the world now that it's been on deadline.
Your viewers may think the shot heard around the world happened in Concord, Massachusetts, and let me tell them, it happened in Lexington.
Lexington, yes. Yep. All right. Well, you've been to a lot of tournaments, I know for a fact, because I've seen you there. Are there things that you are looking for in a tournament that you have tried to recreate for Boston Massacre?
Yeah, I mean, sort of things I've already talked about, but like making sure there's a local flair, making sure that there's some reason why it's in this city, in this hotel, in this place. I think that Carnage does a really good job with that. I actually think that you do a really good job with that. What's that main drag called for you?
Franklin Street is
great, and it's right there. And so like just making sure, because this used to be held probably for financial reasons, so I don't want to down talk anybody, but like it had been in a hotel in Newton, lovely town outside of Boston. There's nothing there. There's nowhere to walk to. And so I really wanted to make sure that you could come and like experience Cambridge, even if you don't want to go and do any sightseeing. Just by coming and being there, you've got stuff going on and particular memories that are really only going to happen when you're in Cambridge and Boston.
Got you. Well, you're also involved in organizing club play in the Boston and surrounding environs, for that matter. Tell us everything we need to know about the Boston Backbiters.
Great. Well, first I want to give a shout out to Hunter Catcher, who does all the stuff in Connecticut, because I want our club to be a regional New England club, and I live outside of Boston, and I only have 24 hours in a day also. So he's really been instrumental in making sure that Connecticut is getting going. Of all the other states, Vermont seems to be the one that might be able to evolve next into having its own play as well. But so you just have to recruit people. You have to hold regular events. People want to come to a club that exists without them being there. It's harder to get people to come and help you create something. Some people want to do that, and that's wonderful. But a lot of people are like, oh, I just want to slot this into what I'm already doing. That can be difficult when you're making a club for diplomacy, because 7 is a strange number to get to. And diplomacy is a hard game to love. And so for a while, my biggest bit of advice, if someone wants to get a club going in their area, is to find a variant that you like that's less than 7 people. For us, that was Ancient Med. I like that. I studied classics in college. I just really liked that era. It's a fine map. It's not great, but it handles 5 people. You can play 4 or 5 years pretty well. Beyond that, we have found that it was kind of less. There were diminishing returns, but it meant that we had a game. And when we had new people come, we could say, hey, this is like 95% of the way there. The real map looks different, but the negotiations, the order reading, the conniving, like that all happens the same. And it's a great way for people to come and just like see what the game's about. Now we have, we did Ancient Med for about 1.5 years. So really don't be shy in like using that for as long as you need to. It is a bit of a crutch. Hopefully your people won't fall in love with the Ancient Med map and not want to go to the Classic. But now we have 2 games a month. We are fortunate that we have a local bar that's very friendly to us. And they're very cool with us coming over and taking over a whole bunch of space. Last time we went, actually, we forgot our timer. And so they held on to it, and I was able to swing by. And then they gave it back to us. So like finding a venue that works out well, obviously people can host in their homes. That's great too. I think most of our people around here have pretty small Boston apartments. And so it's harder to get people to want to host. It's also like, it can be stressful to invite 6 people into your home. You may not know them all. You may have other family members who aren't comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Parking can be an issue.
Yep.
Yeah. But if you can get people to come, if 1 in 10 of them likes the game, I find that's a pretty good ratio. And then as long as you can keep the calendar pretty consistent, then people are going to know that you're there. And hopefully they'll tell their, every time someone joins, you now have people in their personal network who they can invite. And that's really where it gets. Like if you can get people off the street, great, that's hard. But if someone likes the game, they probably know somebody else who will like it as well. And then your network just grows and grows.
Yeah, that's great. And frankly, if you hold events or club games or something like that in a public place, you can sometimes, people will walk up to you and say, oh, that's diplomacy. I used to play that 15 years ago. And that does happen. I was in a game. I was in a game in Washington not too long ago. I just happened to be there, and I was played in one of the PTKS games, which plays in a bar. And a guy came up and said, diplomacy, I love that game. And so we got him signed up for PTKS mailing list. I mean, it happens in public places sometimes.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We've had that. None of those people have actually come to anything, but like the interest is there. And at some point, it'll, all 3 steps. I'm interested enough to say hi, interested enough to actually come. Those are all going to align. You just have to make sure that you're there to be available for the opportunity.
Yeah, that's totally right. All right, well, let's step back a minute and be a little more global here in terms of our view of what's going on in the hobby. I sometimes like to ask my guests questions like, what do you think we in the hobby nowadays are doing particularly well, or what do you think we could do better?
Diplomacy is a very collaborative game, and I think that it brings together people who are very collaborative in nature, and they're very project-oriented. And I think that has just benefited us enormously. As far as things that we could do better, I don't know how, because I've thought about doing it here, and every time I kind of chicken out because it sort of feels like a waste of time. But it'd be nice to have like a diplomacy social where we get people who we know play diplomacy, and that, like, they're part of the diplomacy club here, there, wherever, and you just get together and hang out a bit. And there's no expectation of playing diplomacy. But every time I think to make that event, I then think, if we're getting together, let's just play diplomacy, because then we can hang out there also. But hanging out playing diplomacy is not exactly the same thing. And I find it's great to, like, at a tournament, the best time to hang out with somebody is after you've played a game of diplomacy. Yes. That's wonderful. And after you play a game of diplomacy in a club, almost everyone wants to go home. And so And I don't know how we think about starting like a 10 a.m. club game, but I think that that's sort of the way to do that if people want to get more just generic socializing, is get an early game started and then afterwards be like, hey, it's like 3:00. Let's just hang out here.
Well, that does happen at tournaments, as we know. At tournaments,
Right.
people will come and play, and then they'll go out afterwards or go out the next day, during the lunch break or whatever, however the tournament is set up. That socializing can either be built into a Friday night or a Thursday night slot,
Right.
which is what some tournaments do, or built into a Saturday night slot, which is kind of what we do at Dixiecon. There's times that you could build in the social time, but you're right to focus on that. Those connections, in addition to the games, those connections are really what keep people going and what keeps people coming back.
Yeah.
All right. Well, any final thoughts for our Deadline audience here? Alex, it's been a pleasure to have you back on the show to talk about Boston Massacre and other subjects.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you just hit the nail on the head. Come to Boston Massacre. You'll have a great time. You'll get to hang out with me and other people. You get to play with diplomacy. You get to see Cambridge. You get to see the gaming store. It's like also a bookstore. There's a lot of stuff going on there. So please come. And maybe I should wear this hat there too. So yes.
Well, it's not just you now. We've already established here on this program that what people should be doing is bringing a tricorn hat or getting one there so that you can wear it during round one. I think we've already heard this.
That's true. I don't know what the incentive is. I guess the incentive would be you could also be a pioneer. It's awesome.
You could be awesome.
Sure. Yeah. And you can also be a pioneer in the world of fashion.
I'm not sure that pioneer is the word that anyone was looking for there, but certainly the word fashion is involved in the description of the hat.
Choice fashion is I think the best way to put it, because it can go either way.
I also think the word choice, that a choice was made, could be involved in whatever fashion opinion one would have. Alex, it is great for you to be on the show, and thank you so much for doing it. And thank you for running the Boston Massacre, one of our sort of grand old hobby institutions at this point after 20 plus years of operation.
Happy to be a part of it, David. Thanks for having me on again.
You got it. And now for something completely different. As part of our continuing series on ways that viewers can improve their diplomacy outcomes, a segment we call How to Play, let's join special correspondent Hal Schild as he interviews past World Dipcon champ Jamal Blakkarly of Australia on the subject of when to do absolutely nothing.
Hey, Jamal, thank you for taking a few minutes to have this discussion.
Good morning, Hal. Good to be here.
It's always good to talk to you. So the reason behind this, our discussion today, Jamal, is just like this TV show Seinfeld. It's really about nothing. The other day, you and I were playing a game on VDL. You were playing Austria, and 3-4 turns into the game, you chose to not move any of your units. I think you had 3 of them descend on your 4th unit in Greece, if I remember correctly.
That is correct. Everything went to Greece.
Right. Can you tell me what was your thinking behind that?
Sure. And look, to start with, I have to give credit where credit is due. That move is heavily inspired by my fellow Australian Andrew Goff, who is a big fan of doing nothing. I think his preference for doing nothing is to move all his units in a circle and then the next turn move them in a circle back the other way. Is the way he likes to do it. But yeah, I mean, like, I guess the premise of, or the idea behind doing nothing is just fundamentally like looking at a situation and realizing that to do anything is gonna have some consequence you don't want. So it's kind of like the do you know the chess term Zunzwag, where you're in a position where you kind of, if you make any move, you actually worsen your position? It's a little bit like that. Like sometimes in diplomacy, if you are to make any move, you're going to worsen your position, and so the best thing to do is to make no move. And it's not often you're worsening your position tactically, but diplomatically you're going to worsen your position, and really that's the key to it. It's how do I avoid making any enemies, creating a situation where any of my allies are annoyed at me in any kind of way. And sometimes the best thing to do is just sit on your hands and go, yeah, look, really sorry, we had to all invade Greece.
Did you let them know beforehand you were going to do nothing?
I think I floated the idea. So as a big proponent of doing nothing, I think everyone knows I love a wave, which is the ultimate doing nothing when you don't build anything. And look, I have noticed that there are some players who get a bit annoyed at you doing nothing, like that they consider that, you know, if you're in an alliance with them, you have to be pretty active in that alliance. So I did float the idea. I think I jokingly said at one point, so yeah, I think Spiros asked me, oh, like, well, what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know, I might just hold my units. And kind of was like, well, let's see what their reaction was. And both, I think I was Austria, and both Italy and Turkey in that situation just kind of laughed at it. So I went, all right, I'm pretty safe here to not do anything, and I don't think there's going to be too many ramifications of that.
Was there anything that tipped you in favor of doing nothing when you were looking at the positions? At least for me, the first question is, well, what should I do? And I don't really often get to the point of nothing. And frankly, that's true in my life too. I tend to be somebody who's proactive. Sitting on the couch and doing nothing isn't my natural state. So what made you first think that this was the right time for nothing?
Well, look, I think the key to this kind of strategy and this approach, right, is to really think of the idea that you actually can never do nothing. That doing nothing is doing something, right? So inaction is still a choice, right? And you know, I think it's this situation where you look at a board and things are kind of already working in your favor, right? And diplomacy is a game about balance, right? The game can be really finely balanced, and sometimes if you lean too heavily one way or the other, you actually tip the balance out of a situation that's kind of favorable to you. So in this situation, I had Turkey and Russia fighting like cats and dogs, completely going at each other, and I had Italy completely committed to doing a Lepanto over to land an army in Turkey, all of which is really good for me as Austria, right? I love this. There is no one attacking me. Everyone's kind of pissed off at each other. Italy's about to make another enemy over there. And so I looked at the situation and I kind of went, well, I like this situation. I would like this situation to further materialize. I'd like people to get further embroiled in their war. I'd like Italy to land their Lepanto and be able to, you know, to actually overcommit to Turkey in that kind of way. And I realized that if I was to make a move, I would destabilize that situation. If I moved against Russia, I would essentially make the Turkey-Russia fight very much in Turkey's favor, and Russia would be quite annoyed at me. But if I was to move against Turkey, I'd do the vice versa. Turkey would be pissed at me, and if I moved against Italy, then Italy would essentially convoy straight back and not overcommit. So, it's kind of like, well, if I like the scenario, how do I not change it? How do I keep the status quo going as much as possible? And sometimes that's just to sit there.
Right. And what was their reaction after the turn moves were revealed?
I think people laughed a little bit. I don't think anyone was too worried by it. I think, both Turkey and Russia were a little bit annoyed in the sense that they both wanted me to commit with them against the other one. But again, the great thing about doing nothing is you have a lot of plausible deniability, right? So you do nothing, and they might go, "Oh, you're supposed to help me attack here," and you just go, "Oh no, well, like I'm not fighting you,
right?
Like, I'm not helping the other person. It's okay. I'm sitting here, and it's I'll help you next turn. It's fine." And again, sometimes you want to see how something plays out. Like in that scenario, I didn't know who was going to win the Turkey-Russia war, right? It was a real precarious turn where there were a lot of guesses on both sides. Turkey ended up winning that war, so I sided with him. But if Russia had won that war, I wanted the ability to turn around and side with Russia. So, if you commit one way or the other, you take away your future choices, right? It's just delaying a choice until a better time to make it.
Right. Now, I've heard you say before that you should always be truthful in the game of diplomacy. You shouldn't lie to anyone on the board. Do you feel the do nothing? I know you said earlier that you kind of said it and they kind of dismissed it. Do you feel you were truthful enough in the sense of like, yeah, I'm really going to do it? Or did you kind of just feel okay telling them that you were and they didn't really take it seriously?
I think I was truthful where it mattered. So there were a couple of very specific moves that were asked for. I think I had an army in Bulgaria. No, I had an army in Budapest, and I think Turkey asked me to support their army in Romania to hold in that turn, and I said I can't do that. I'm doing something else with it.
Right.
And so I made it clear where there was a specific move that was like requested that I was, hey, I can't do that, or I won't do that, or whatever else. So yeah, I certainly was very honest about my intentions. But yeah, so I mean, like, I think it's, yeah, doing nothing doesn't work if you're lying about it. That is very true, right? If you're saying, yes, absolutely, I'm going to commit to supporting you here, and then you don't, that's as good as a stab in a lot of people's eyes. And so you have to be really careful about communicating in such a way that people are, at least aren't too surprised by it.
Now, the outcome of the game is that you had the board top, which to me was the other interesting note in your do nothing turn. Is you by not doing anything, you could argue you kind of threw away a turn. You didn't get any momentum, at least. You just stood there, but you went on to take the board anyway. So to me, that was even more impressive, was the do nothing and the board top, which to me just showed that how important it is at times to remember that do nothing is an option.
For sure, and look, I think you used a key word there, which is momentum, right? The diplomacy is a game about momentum, and it's really a game about timing. So I think a lot of people think about their own momentum. They think, I'm moving my pieces, or my allies moving their pieces. How do we get those pieces moving? But, I mean, it's very easy to forget that there are 6 other players on the board who also have momentum, and who are also moving pieces at the same time. And if you get your timing wrong of your momentum, it's very, very easy to run straight into a brick wall. You know, you can get up a whole lot of speed, and if your momentum is wrong in the timing, then right. An opposition alliance can form a stalemate line, or your opponent can see it coming and they can block moves, and suddenly you've built up all this speed and used all this capital to get this momentum, and then it goes nowhere. So momentum is only good if you have clear road with which to run in, right? Like, I don't particularly care about running fast if there's a big wall in front of me and all I'm going to do is hit my head against it. I only want to run fast when there's actually space to do so. So sometimes momentum is actually not about moving right now. It's about waiting for the opportunity when the weight... I think a lot in diplomacy about weight and balance, and where are the weight of the pieces moving, and you know, if you look at a board almost physically, you know, where is the mass of pieces going? And if all the weight is moving away from you, that's the time you want momentum. That's the time when you want to move quickly. Whereas if their weight is sitting still or moving towards you, I mean, there's no point. Having momentum is not going to do you anything. You may as well save your chips in the bank and be able to use them at a time when you're actually going to be able to suddenly crash through a line and take 3 centers, rather than right. Just, you know, move for the sake of moving, right, and then and now you're on the line.
Right. Well, one more question for you, and then I'll let you go. In the game of diplomacy, there's lots of acronyms, names for different kinds of strategies. The Ponto, the lion, sea lion. Do we need to come up with a name for the nothing move?
I've on DBN, I've started referring to it as the Jade Buddha Peace Prize. Because you're just having peace. You're just sitting there, and everything is peaceful. So you know, I can take my my moniker off it and just call it the Peace Prize. And yeah, I like that as a kind of as a thought there, because you know, there's I guess maybe I'll leave everyone with this thought, which is that, I mean, to me, the first question I always ask is, why should I do anything? Right, so for me, doing nothing is the default, right? And it really takes a very good reason for me to go and do anything at all. So that's true in builds especially, right? I spoke before about how often I wave a build, because building is the most committal move you can make. Once you build a fleet or an army, it's quite difficult to get rid of that fleet or an army if you want to change your mind. So for me, I will start with the premise that I'm going to do nothing. I'm not going to make any kind of move. And then I will look around and go, well, is there a reason for me to do something? Is it important to an alliance that I make a move here? Is there an opportunity to grab a whole bunch of centers and really improve my position? Or is this situation not working for me, and do I have to do something to change the kind of strategic diplomatic situation on the board? When I start from there, yeah, sometimes you don't get past the first step. Sometimes you just go, there's no reason to do anything there. And so everyone thinks diplomacy is a war game. It's not a war game. It can be a peace game. You just have peace and be friends with everybody and draw in 1903 and go to the bar. It's great. So
to bring it back to where we started, the the initial idea of just do nothing and then see why you should do something. I'll call that the George Costanza strategy.
Yeah.
Why do anything? I could just sit at home and do nothing. So Jamal, I'll let you go do something. I know you got your day ahead of you. Thank you for getting up early and talking, and I look forward to playing on a board against you again soon.
Thanks so much, Hal, and I promise I will do absolutely nothing on that board.
I'm going to remember that. Take care.
Thanks to all of you watching at home. We hope you have enjoyed this broadcast of Deadline. If you have news, ideas for features, or feedback of any kind, please feel free to send an email to info@diplobn.com, or you can drop me a line directly using davidhood@dixiecon.com. To review all of our broadcast offerings, visit our website at www.diplobn.com. This is David Hood signing off. I wish you brightness and bliss and, of course, Belgium.